Hello everyone and welcome to my channel MiTutorials. In this tutorial, I will be teaching you how you can create your first data warehouse, import data from Azure database into data warehouse, transform your data set and also create a Power BI report from that particular data set. So let's get started with this tutorial. So right now I'm on Power BI service. I'm going to click on this Power BI icon over here and choose Microsoft Fabric. And from the host of options that are available over here, I'm interested in the Synapse data warehouse. So I'm going to click on Synapse data warehouse, and what you will see here is the preview of the warehouse. So let's select warehouse and then let's create our new warehouse over here. I'm going to call this as tutorials underscore DW. So this is the new warehouse that I am creating within Fabric. So once this particular warehouse is created, you just have to wait for a couple of moments until everything starts appearing over here. And now we are on this screen where we can build a warehouse, and there are different ways that you can bring in data into our warehouse. One is you can directly create tables with TSQL. We can get data from the data flow Gen 2. We can get the data from pipeline, and we can also start with sample data. For the sake of this tutorial, let's import some data from the Azure SQL database. So, and on the left side over here, we have the Explorer where we can see the schemas, and then we also can see the security, and we have some queries over here. We'll come to this in some time, but let's click on get data and then let's click on new data pipeline. Now this also is a preview feature. So let's wait for this to complete, and then let's give it a name for our pipeline. In this case, I'm going to call this as, let's call this as sample pipeline and click on create. Once the pipeline is created, we get into this particular screen over here which says choose data source, and then we can choose the data source from the host of options that are available over here. There are different options that are available for us to choose from, and in this case I'm going to use the Azure SQL database. I'm going to click on Azure here and then click on next, and I already have a connection set up over here. And if you do not have a connection here, you can click on create new connection and follow the steps. And so in this case I already have the connection created. I'm going to choose the same connection here from my drop down over here, and then I'm going to click on next. And on this screen, I can choose how I want to import. I can import an existing table, an entire existing table, or I can write a query to bring the data from my Azure SQL database. In this case, I'm going to choose the existing tables and choose some of the tables here that I want to import. For example, I want to bring in person.person. I want to bring in the person.email address. So these are the two tables that I will be bringing in into our data warehouse today. So I'm going to click on next. And then it's asking us to choose the data warehouse where you want to bring the data into. So in this case, it is tutorials underscore DW. I'm going to click on next, and then I have those two tables appearing over here. These are my load settings. I can either choose to load into a new table, or I can choose to load to an existing table if I already have a table created. In this case, I don't have any table created. So I will be choosing the option which says load to person table, and my destination table name, I want to load this into my DBO schema. So dbo.email address, and then on this next thing over here, I'm going to do the same thing, dbo.person, and then you have all of your source columns and your destination columns over here along with the data types. And if you want to change any of the data types over here, you can do that. And once you've made all the changes that you require over here, I'm going to click on next. And then there is an option here which says enable staging. You can check this box if you don't want to enable staging. In this case, I'm going to let that as is, and then I'm going to click on next. So now it is showing us the diagram over here which says it is bringing in data from SQL database, and then goes through the staging and then into our final destination, which is our data warehouse. So and then there's an option over here which says start data transfer immediately, and then I have save plus run. I'm going to click on save and run. And once this is gathering all the information and it is making that particular change, and now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just click on OK. So you can see that we have created a pipeline over here. So this is one of the tasks here which is copying the data from Azure database into our data warehouse. So once this is done, so let's give it a second. You see that this is currently under progress, and now it says that the pipeline status has succeeded and it has taken this much amount of time to bring in the data from our Azure database. And now let's head back to our data warehouse. So this is our tutorial DW, and I'm going to click on that, and now we can preview the data that we have imported. So we imported this under our DBO schema, and then we have two tables that are imported over here. One is the email address, we have the data that is visible over here, and then the second table here, which is called as person, we have that data as well in this particular schema over here. And now I can simply click on new SQL query over here and type in any query over here. For example, let's just type in select top 10 star from person, and then I can click on run over here. This will return the top 10 records from that particular table. And as you click queries over here, under my queries, a section will be created over here which says that this is the query that you ran in this case. I can also choose to rename if I would like to. I can just say top 10 from person and click on rename, and now you see that that particular query is saved over here. You can also create new visual query over here. For example, I can bring in the entire persons table into this particular section over here and start working or transforming the data. In this case, let's say let's wait for the preview to come down over here. You can perform various transformations over here as well, like we have the transform option. You can group by or replace values, you have combine, you can merge and append over here. There are a host of options that are available over here as well. Now let's head back to our pipeline over here and see what we can do over here. So this particular task over here is basically copying the data from our Azure database into our data warehouse. Now let's say I want to add a new data flow. I can click on data flow over here, and then I can go into or give it a name to my data flow over here. Let's rename this and call this as full name, and let's head over to settings over here. And you can, if you already have a data flow created, you can simply select that particular data flow over here. But in this case, I don't have any data flow that is created, so I'm going to click on new over here. So that will take me to the data flow section. And within this data flow section over here, I'm going to click on get data from another source, and I'm going to choose OneLake Data Hub over here. And in this case, I'm going to choose the tutorials_dw warehouse, and then it is saying that it is connecting to the warehouse. Let's give it a couple of seconds until it gets connected. And now you can see the tables that are there within that particular warehouse. So I have the email address and person. Let me just import person in this case, and then let's wait for a couple of seconds for this to generate the preview, and then let's click on create. So what this is doing is it is basically importing the data into the data flow, and now this is nothing but the Power Query editor online, and then I can perform some calculations or transformations if you would want over here. For example, let me convert this particular table to just have two columns. One is the business entity ID, which is the primary key in this table, and then I want to merge the first name, middle name and last name into one single column. So what I will do is I'm going to click on business entity ID, select first name, middle name, last name, right click, and I'm going to remove other columns in this case. And once that is done, I'm going to choose or select all three columns over here. I'm going to right click and click on merge columns, and then I need a separator as space. I need a new column name here. I'm going to call this as full name, and then I'm going to click on OK. So this has basically merged all of those three columns into one single column over here. Now I can export my transformation that I have done over here on this particular table and move that or export that into my data warehouse. I can choose the data destination over here. I'm going to click on the plus icon over here and choose data warehouse, and then click on next. And now you can see the data warehouse workspace over here. I'm going to expand that. And within this particular workspace, I should have my data warehouse, which is data warehouse or tutorials_dw. And when I expand this, let's see what do I have over here. And when I expanded tutorials_dw, it is displaying all the tables that I have within that particular data warehouse. Now, one thing to note here is that I am unable to see the schemas that are available within this particular data warehouse. I'm not sure if this is a bug, but I am unable to see the schemas available within the tutorials_dw. In this case, let me just proceed here. So this will by default add into our DBO schema. So in this case, I'm going to rename this and call this as person_full_name, and then I'm going to click on next. And then I have two options to choose from over here. Either I can append to the table or I can replace the entire data set. So in this case, I'm going to choose the replace over here. I can also choose the data type that if I want to make some changes over here, and then I'm going to click on save settings. Once this is done, I can now click on publish. So this will take a couple of seconds until it gets published, and you will see that it is now starting to work on this particular data flow over here. And now this data flow is successfully completed. Let's go back to our data warehouse. And now within the table section, I can see that there's a new table here called as person_full name. And when I click on this particular table, person full name, and we can see that person business identity column and the full name column is visible over here. Now let's head back to our pipeline. Now that I have these two tasks over here, now I need to connect them. Basically, after I have successfully imported the data from my Azure SQL database into data warehouse, I need the data flow task to run. So what I can do is I can choose the on success option over here and connect it with my data flow. So when I've completed this task, it will go ahead and execute the data flow tasks over here, which is nothing but creating a new table by merging first name, last name, and middle name into one single column and creating that as a new table. And now we can execute this once again to check if our pipeline is working or not. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my data warehouse over here. I'm going to write two queries. I've written two lines of code over here which will basically delete the data from our table. So I'm going to click on run over here, and then it's going to take a couple of seconds before it gets executed. So the data has now been deleted. Let's head back to our table and verify that. And you can see that the table is blank. Our email address table is blank. Our person table is blank. But however, we have the data in person full name table. I'm going to just drop this particular table over here because our data flow or our pipeline is going to take care of creating this particular table. So now that I have deleted this, let me refresh, and and now I have my two blank tables. Let's head back to our pipeline. I'm going to click on discard changes. I have my pipeline over here. I can either choose to run this particular pipeline or I can also choose to schedule this. So I can schedule this and turn this on. You can choose the repeat frequency by the minute, hourly, daily or weekly. Choose your start time, end time and the time zone. For now, I'm going to just leave it at that and click on run, and I'm going to click on save and run. And once this is gathering all the changes and it is saved, and then I'm going to click on OK over here. So, and now it is starting to execute this particular package. And now it says that my run has been succeeded with both of these tick options over here. And let's head back to our data warehouse. And now we can see that our data has been loaded back into our tables, and with also our third table over here, which is person_full name, being created from our data flow task. And from this particular screen, you can also create a new measure. Let's say you want to know the count of rows present in your data set. And let's call this as count rows is equals to, I'm going to use the count rows function over here and pass in my person full name table. I'm going to close the bracket here and press enter. Now we have a measure created here called as count rows. And now if you want to create a Power BI report out of this, there are two options. One is you can do this from the Power BI desktop. And the second option here is to just click on the new report that you see over here, which will directly take you to the Power BI service, wherein you will be able to create visuals. And you saw that we created a new measure here called as count rows that is visible over here. I can create a card out of this particular visual to show the number of rows that I have in that particular data set. Let's give it a couple of seconds while this is getting the data for us. Now we can see that we have 20,000 rows in that particular data set. We of course have the option to query our tables over here. We also have an option here where you can go into the model and create relationships between the tables. For example, let's say I want to create a relationship between the email address table and the person table. I can simply drag the business entity ID into the business entity ID of the persons table, and you can define the cardinality that you want. You can define the cross filter direction over here, and then I'm going to click on confirm. Now this will create the relationship between these two tables. So this view here is just like what you see on the Power BI desktop. Now all of that you can do here well within the data warehouse. And if you want to connect to your data warehouse from the Power BI desktop, you can click on One Lake Data Hub over here and click on Warehouses, and this will take you to the warehouses that are present in your data set or your workspace. Tutorials_DW was our data warehouse. I'm going to click on simply connect over here, and then this will automatically connect to that particular data warehouse and bring us all the tables that we have in that particular data set. So as you can see over here, we have the email address, person and person full name present in that particular data set. And if we go to model view, the relationships have been already created for us automatically. So this is how you can create your first data warehouse. You can start exploring of what other options are available for you to play around with and create report seamlessly. So this is one of the way where you can integrate your transformations, your reporting, all of that within the Microsoft product, which is Fabric. So stay tuned on my channel, wherein I will be exploring more on the data warehouse, and I'll be creating more tutorials for you guys to watch and learn. So that's it guys in this particular tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, you learned something new today. Please consider subscribing to my channel for more such tutorials.